You're listening to podcastjuice.net.
Hey, you! Get out on this dance floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Prince Podcast here on podcastjuice.net. We got a doozy for you today. Today we are going to be talking about Prince in the 90s. So that means we're going to be looking at albums, everything. The 90s is obviously a very highly debated era in Prince's music. Did he go sideways? Did he turn to hip hop, or what was going on? And we're going to get into all that. There's a lot to talk about. We are joined today by some very special guests. You may have heard us mention repeatedly on this show in the last few shows about the Music Snob podcast that we've been checking out. Well, I can say that today we are joined by two of the gentlemen from that show today. So we want to give a warm welcome to Arthur and Jehan. Thank you, sirs, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So let's go to Arthur. Arthur, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this Music Snobs podcast, how that started.
Born in Chicago, raised in Oakland. I guess the best way to say it, I first heard Prince when I was maybe 9 years old, driving across the Bay Bridge with my mom, and saw him on American Bandstand, and ever since then I was hooked. I had grew up listening to a lot of rock, and Prince was the first one that kind of carried me back over to, I have an older sister who had a lot of Earth, Wind & Fire, Funkadelic, Ohio Players albums. So it kind of melded what I was listening to what I was listening to from my sister's room. And ever since then, I've just been a music snob, a music elitist. When I was in the 5th grade, I knew the difference between an import version of an album and the domestic version of an album. You know, I always had my LPs slotted correctly, alphabetical order with the plastic still on. I just been like that. And I read liner notes in 9th grade. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
Hooking up with like-minded individuals was, it's kind of a long time coming, because, you kind of have to name check certain people, certain songs, kind of look at other people's music library to see what they're into before you really try to reveal, what you're on. Mm-hmm. And the show really started it kind of like in that vein where the four of us is kind of connected via email. We each were either direct friends or one person away from knowing the other person, and maybe 2 years of emails, just going back, where it started out, check this out, check that out, and then we'd start debating. One of us, it might have been Scoop, had been like, y'all should just do a podcast. Y'all some music snobs. And, here we are, going on 13 shows later, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
But really honored to have you all as fans of the show. I actually started listening to the Prince podcast. I think, Mike, you started in 2005 or 6, but you and Tobias would go album by album.
Yes.
And I think I sent you this long email rant when you all were on Dirty Mind. I'm like, y'all didn't go deep enough.
Interesting.
Deep enough.
I kind of remember that.
That's the core of the myth.
Right.
So we're really, really happy to be on the show.
Oh, man, that's what's up. I love that. Jehan, man. Tell me about yourself, sir. You immediately, when you just your voice and the stuff you talk about, I feel, and I say this with respect, sometimes you either can love or hate some of the suggestions you make. I love them all, and I just love because they're just so disruptive. That's a great way to put it. Positively disruptive. But go ahead.
That's kind of like the attention, I think. I pretty much the same background as Arthur, and pretty much the same involvement. I guess I'm really just a hanger-on, really, in the Music Snobs. I think I'm just lucky to be there. I think they, like all Hollywood movies nowadays, they just needed a British villain, and so that's me. But definitely, yeah. I mean, fan of your shows as much as anything else, and I mean, you're deep. I mean, you've been going, like Arthur said, since 2005, right? That's crazy. So yeah, I mean, good for you. If we can last half as long, we'll be lucky.
You will. You guys are good. All right. So, of course, we have Big Sexy and Sack. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Got my workout in. Got my NFL stuff happening. And Arthur, you're from Oakland. What part? Because I grew up in Oakland myself.
Oh, Oakland Hills, Skyline, class of '89.
Oh, Skyline. I see.
Oh, here we go.
See, I was Oakland Tech, class of '81. Natural enemies of ours, but that's cool. Love to have you on the show.
Good to be here, man.
Mike, why do I get the feeling some drama gonna go down?
Already, you ain't even got into it. And of course, Big Ken, sir, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm glad to be on the show today with the Snobs. It's an honor, and I'm glad it sounds like somebody else gonna be the villain besides me this time. So it's all good.
All right, so let's get things started. Prince in the 90s. Now, before we get into the actual 90s, there is one album that just sits outside of being a part of the 90s, but I think that people have something to say. I think this album signaled a lot of things, and the album I'm talking about is the soundtrack to the movie Batman, and it's the album Batman, the original soundtrack version from Prince. And this album came out, I believe it was June 20th of 1989. And, of course, coming off the heels of Love Sexy, which comes off the heels of Sign of the Times. And, I mean, that was an amazing run. Batman, I will say for myself, this was a full stop, as they say. And I was like, wait a minute. There's something in the water does not compute here. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to give the first person to speak on this. I want to go to Jehan. Jehan, what does that Batman album mean to you?
To me, it's quite. I'm in two minds about it because it. I think at the time I judged it more harshly than I would nowadays in the context of his recent material. But when it came out, certainly at that time I thought exactly the same as you. Yeah, this is the fall-off point. This is where it changed, and this is where he. If I had to describe exactly what I think it represents in terms of Prince, it's where he stopped trying. It's where he stopped stretching for the stars like he was doing on everything else, and it's where he stopped trying to provide us with a complete movement from start to finish.
Interesting. I would say this too. I think this might be the first album where he decided, I'm going to make what you think Prince is supposed to be, if that makes any sense. In terms of, it's not going to be super adventurous and I'm just going to do some whatever, this whole direction I'm going to give you what you would think a Prince album needs to have on it. Now, that could be mandated by the producers of the movie. Obviously, Warner Brothers is a huge financial, thing at stake here with the success of that movie and what the songs need to sound like. But in terms of his career, for me as a fan, I was like, Big Sexy and Sack, what do you think?
Excuse me, I agree completely because coming off of the Sign of the Times Love Sexy projects, you go into this, the first thing I noticed when I heard it was it sounded incomplete. The production wasn't the same. And when I saw him perform on Saturday Night Live doing Electric Chair, I didn't recognize the band. I'm like, who are these cats? And you could tell it was more, I don't want to use the phrase stopgap, but it was definitely more of something that to me just looked like it was thrown together.
Arthur, what do you think?
For the most part, along the same lines. It was a signal of a change. It was the second band that he had splintered in 3 years. He even got rid of Fink. I didn't care for. I remember sneaking a Walkman in a chemistry class so that I could hear the debut of Bad Dance, and was just like, damn, this is such a waste of time. But then when I heard the album, there were some things that I liked on the album. The Future, definitely Electric Chair, definitely Vicky Waiting. But it's right. It was a not ill-conceived, but it was a quasi thrown together album. I mean, take a step back. He really needed the money. He burned through a lot of money on Love Sexy. Paisley Park was not doing well. He had a lot of staff changes going on. He needed a hit. He didn't have any hit off of Love Sexy. He hadn't had a hit since Kiss. And he was going through transitions. You could tell the new tour was the debut of the Game Boys. That was kind of a precursor to his Diamonds and Pearls band. There was no Fink. Patrice Rushen was playing with him for a little while on keyboards. Mm-hmm. He still had Miko. He still had Levi. But there was no cohesion with the band, really. You didn't really know what was going to go on. I mean, dude grew a beard, and he wore furry pants with no shirt and did this whole tour. The B-sides were all but lacking. Feel You Up, a holdover from 1982, was the only saving grace of what we heads really know as the golden age of the B-side. I can't stand I Love You and Me. To this day, I don't even have it digitally.
What, are you serious? Arthur, what are you talking about?
Thank you.
That's a beautiful
I've never
song.
liked that. Yeah, and Isaac agrees with you. I've never liked that song.
But Arthur, what about the harmonies on it? To me, that's like, I mean, he's got a lot of beautiful ballads out there, but I think the harmonies on I Love You and Me are, I don't know, to me they're beautiful.
I like them as well. That song is great to me, but go ahead.
Yeah, but, it's just that Batman was, for me, a stepping stone for really what was going to come next. And unfortunately, what came next was Graffiti Bridge. Okay. And that is, man, I thought Under the Cherry Moon was bad. But,
oh, hell no.
Let me rap. Well, let's go into Graffiti. But before we go into that, I'm going to just play just a little bit, just to sort of, here's the saving grace for me personally of that Batman album. This is the one song that I like. This is actually a sort of different mix of Vicky Waiting that surfaced, I think, last year. So that song is hot.
I've never heard that before. That's crazy.
Yeah, that found its way to the internet. I believe it was last year, and it's a longer version. And when you hear this version, you hear it when it goes beyond what we hear from the album. Mm-hmm. You can really hear sort of those love, sexy instrumentation, stuff coming through. So again, guys always got songs. So now let's get into the 90s. So the 90s.
Hold on, man, I didn't get my chance, bro.
Well, I'm going to give you the first on this one.
But I'm the lone wolf dissenter for Batman, though.
Go ahead.
Okay, because I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, I like the album then and now. Although I'll have to, I didn't look at it as deeply as you guys did. Now, when the album first came out, I immediately noticed the difference. I noticed the new band and the new sound, and there was a small part of me that was like, I wanted more of the love sexy sound, the time sound, but I kind of dismissed it in my mind because I realized this was a soundtrack for a film. And by virtue of it being a soundtrack for the film, there's going to be a lot of leeway in terms of, not sounding like his normal thing. So my thought process at the time was this was more maybe a one-off. You know what I'm saying? That maybe this was just for the soundtrack, this type of sound was just for the soundtrack, and maybe the next album would go back to normal Prince. Now, obviously, it turned out that wasn't the case. So in retrospect, it was a signpost of, a marker of what was going to happen. But the stuff that happened with Graffiti Bridge and the next two albums after that, to me, are far more egregious than what this is. Because there are quality songs on here, in my opinion. Scandalous, Electric Chair. I like Electric Chair. The Future, Bat Dance, I Love You and Me. Like Jehan said, it is a beautiful ballad. I don't listen to it all that much, but it is a beautiful ballad. So it's a quality album. I wouldn't hold it up to the level of the previous albums. I'm not putting it in that category, but I don't think it's as bad as you guys make it out to be.
Well, I think in retrospect, I can say I can listen to it now, and there are songs I love. But I just remember when it first dropped. I remember me and Tobias bought this album the same day, and we didn't play it for at least 2 weeks. I just didn't want. I couldn't hear it. I was like. There's maybe two songs. That's how I feel. I can actually listen to the Batman soundtrack pretty much from start to finish when I do listen to it. I can't say that about the next 3 albums. Okay. To this day, I can't listen to any one of those 3 from start to finish. All right, so let's get into it. So the 90s. The first album of the 90s is another soundtrack album, and this is to the film Graffiti Bridge. Now, we're not going to review the movie. It's terrible. Just put that out there. It's a terrible movie. We did a commentary podcast on it, and so there you go. But the album Graffiti Bridge. Let's get into this. Is the first sort of an album where it's not just exclusively Prince tracks. He's got The Time on here. I remember just the idea that The Time was First Day Coming Back and that they're going to be on a Prince album. In my mind, I was like, well, this will be one of the greatest things ever. Before I heard that, I was like, oh, no brainer. I was hyped for the movie, again, not knowing what to expect. The album, I'm just going to put my comments, we got a lot of people here. I would just say this. When the album first dropped, I was a fan of the record. I was not a fan of the chivit and those elements, the scratching and the rap stuff. I was bewildered, and it hurt me, it irritated me, because I didn't want Prince to be associated with that sort of stuff, just because I didn't think it had nothing to do with him. But I actually used to really play the Prince tracks heavy. Stop This Feeling I Got. Again, that was a syndrome of, why are these songs so short? Because you can hear they're about to go in, and they always fade out. I hated that. I was into Play Your Funky Weapon. I actually really liked that. So I was actually a fan of this record, and I am always said, and I say this again, I am a huge fan of the song Graffiti Bridge. As corny as
Wait,
that's,
what? Wait.
Yes.
Don't even waste your time, Arthur. Trust me, we've been through this before.
As corny of that song
song.
I love that song. I don't know why. I like corny type of shit. And I always, the album came out before the movie. I honestly will say I was envisioning there was going to be this huge scene at the end that they were going to perform that song and Tevin was going to come in.
Exactly.
But last thing I would say, I don't think I have it here, but there is an alternate version of the song Graffiti Bridge that does not have Tevin or Mavis, and it's really just the Love Sexy Band. That is dope. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's the same sort of music, but you can really hear Prince on the guitar. He's doing his guitar stuff, and I could see how that came out of that Love Sexy sessions. Like, I actually like it. So anyway, that's what I gotta say. Arthur, I know this is your favorite album, of course. Please, what's going on?
I was excited about this album coming out. I remember that I somehow scored an advanced Warner Brother copy of it, and saw that it had Can't Stop This Feeling I Got on it, We Can Funk on it. Now, if you remember, the songs are so short because they were really, originally they were done as like a trilogy, right? You had Girl of My Dreams, right, that fed into Can't Stop This Feeling I Got, that fed into We Can Funk. Then I also saw that there was Join Repetition on there. Mm-hmm. So now I'm like, man, I'm about to get full-on high-quality versions of these songs. And when I heard We Can Funk, I threw the tape out. When the album came out, I only listened to Join Repetition on principle, and A Question of You, which single-handedly needs to be in anybody's top 10 Prince song list, anybody's snob or not. But I guess Graffiti Bridge should have been, or rather was, what Purple Rain should have been, which was, if Purple Rain was a sound, and I'm not going to try to deviate all heavy, but I'm just saying, if Purple Rain was, as it originally conceived, a soundtrack, like I heard you Des Dickerson interview, and he verified that, like, hey, Modern Air was supposed to be on an original configuration of Purple Rain. Then that would have been more of a complete soundtrack, and maybe not, but who cares, right? Maybe a better soundtrack album for that film, aside from all that. Graffiti Bridge, if it were just a Prince album, it probably would have been better. The songs that were included from the time should have been included on Pandemonium to help that album. The songs for Tevin Campbell's album, they should probably put it back on Tevin. I'm just saying it would have worked better for me as, a Prince album. Even if Graffiti Bridge was still on there, even if I'm saying that. I mean, the fact that the grand progression was left off of that album, that is unforgivable. for me as a Prince fan. That you leave that off. You leave the song off that actually verifies you as a songwriter of beautiful songs. How the hell you leave that out and you put on Graffiti Bridge? Graffiti Bridge sounds like the end of the Muppet movie 2.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's always the latest fashion. Jehan, go ahead.
I actually like the album. I think, in fact, Michael, you pretty much took the words out of my mouth in your description of it. Save for the only part that we diverge on is I don't really like the song Graffiti Bridge too much. But I remember when the album came out, and I was a lot younger then, but I like the cover art. I like the fact that it reminded me of Sign of the Times in a way, if only for the fact that it had his face kind of, only on one half of the sleeve or cut off. And just looking at the track listing now, I think the first side of it is dope. I mean, again, I agree with you exactly in terms of all the more hip hop influenced effects that he was trying to use. And I think this may be one of the times when he was starting to try to keep up with everybody else rather than everybody else keeping up with him. But I even like Release It. I like The Question of You. Elephants and Flowers, I think that's one of his best gospel songs.
Yes.
That is a real gospel song. Weekend Funk, I like it. I mean, it doesn't compare to the demo version, but it's still good. If the demo version didn't exist, it would still be a dope track to me. Joy and Repetition, of course, is flawless. I even like Love Machine. I even like this version of Tick Tick Bang. I think after Tick Tick Bang, it really takes a massive dip. But yeah, no, I liked it. I like Pandemonium too, for the record. But yeah.
All right, Big Sexy.
I look at this. I look at the Return of the Time, and the Time songs on here to me don't sound like the Time. It sounds like Morris doing, like you guys said, Morris and Prince are trying to keep up with what was going on instead of doing what they do. I think the Time songs are just not good. When I hear Elephants and Flowers, I think of the performance in the film, and Prince has the Adam and the Ants makeup on. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I hear the song Graffiti Bridge, and it makes me feel like I'm watching an episode of Fame or a bad high school musical. It's just not good. This was a misstep all around. There are some good things in there. The long version of Thieves in the Temple, mind-blowing. Love it. But everything else, Joy Repetition is also great, but it's just overshadowed by, and I have to disagree with my fellow counselor here, because Tick Tick Bang, no, hell no. I can't stand it. This album, and we're all being very polite and not mentioning the name, so I'm going to go ahead and mention the name, T.C. Ellis. That guy alone is worth cringing and running for the hills behind this. He's horrible.
I forgot all about dude. I forgot all about him.
See, yo, kid, let me rap. Oh God, no, I can't do it.
That's my man.
I'm like, dog, you're in a tunic with your name written straight down the shirt. I'm not letting you nowhere. But really, have you heard the original Tick Tick Bang? You've heard the original, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I prefer this one, to be honest with you. But I can appreciate the original. It just sounds like that Dirty Mind sort of sound. But I actually like it.
I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah. Big Ken, what's your final take on this?
Well, I can say this. I like the album, mainly the Prince songs, but this album overall, I agree with most of you guys, all the way down to Tick Tick Bang, I'm down with, although the one song that derails everything for me, and you guys haven't mentioned it yet, is Round and Round. That song is freaking ridiculously whack. It should not have been on this soundtrack. Well, if you're going to put it on the soundtrack, at least put it on the second side toward the end before Graffiti Bridge. Don't wreck the flow. But really what messed this album up for me is, I've always, just like you guys, I suspect, all of us are hardcore Prince fans. You got to be a special kind of cat to be a Prince fan, because not everybody understands where Prince is going with stuff. So by default, if you're a Prince fan, you end up defending Prince a lot of times with the things that he does, right? Well, with this album, you guys talk about the Batman soundtrack. This was the album to me where the dynamic shifted from being a defender of Prince to being almost like an apologizer for Prince, trying to convince people that Prince still had some value in the music game, because the movie sucked and it threw everything out of whack. And then he releases this soundtrack that, like Big Sexy said, certain songs you hear them and they just flash back to those crazy images in the movie. And it just, for me, this was the signpost to me that pointed to a bad direction that he was going, much more so than Batman. I can't listen to this album fully. I listened to Can't Stop This Feeling I Got, Question of You, Elephants and Flowers. I'm with Arthur. I like the original Weekend Funk, Joy and Repetition, Love Machine, Tick Tick Bang, and that's it. And that's only if I'm in the mood to hear those.
Well, and let me add this song. This is a song that constant rotation when I make certain playlists. Still would stand all the time. I actually love the performance on this song. And the funny thing is, when I play it, it makes me think of the movie. Like, that's the one song that I feel like is a very powerful song to me in the performance. And when Prince is going in and toward the end, I just really, I don't know if I was the age I was when I heard it the first time. It just connects to me. I love that track. Round and Round, I thought that was horrendous as well. But I find it funny that is one of the more popular songs from this project. Like, you'll be in the store and you'll hear that song play. Like,
But that was the signal. That was the hit,
sure,
not the Prince track. This was the hit.
Well, and I think
right there was
that song really played into sort of where music was at the time, kind of that dance sort of influence, and it kind of had that. And I was like, I don't want Prince to have anything to do with that sound. And I've actually never really heard the original version of this song, because I don't think it originally sounded like that. I think that was maybe a remix or a mix of it that was like, hey, this is going to be good, so put it out there.
And this was also the album to me, man. Like I said, when I was talking about the Batman soundtrack, I kind of overlooked the Batman soundtrack. I didn't think that much negative of it because I figured it was a one-off. I figured that he was going to come back to like more of a continuation to Love Sexy and all that with the next album. When I got this record, that's when I knew right then and there that those days were gone and possibly permanently gone. And that kind of saddened me at that point. So
that's an excellent point. But when I heard Graffiti Bridge, I didn't have access to a lot of bootleg material at this time, and I was really restricted from what I could get my hands on back then. So I didn't know that Joy and Repetition, when it was released, when Graffiti Bridge came out, I didn't know that was an 86 track. And when I heard it, I thought, oh, there he is. He's still here. And even the maxi single for New Power Generation with, like Love Left, Love Right, it seemed darker than a lot of the material on here. And again, it was like, oh, okay, he's still trying to do something different. But yeah, you're right. We had to, with Sign of the Times, Parade, Love Sexy, you didn't have to search for any difference. It hit you like a bullseye between the eyes. But this was the first time where you had to start, or Batman, and then this was, you had to really go searching and think, well, hang on, is he still doing it? Is he? And sometimes you could say, yeah, okay, in this respect he is, but only in this respect.
By the next album, all traces had more or less disappeared. The new Prince was there.
Okay, well, so we're going to move forward. Now, I will say this. You guys brought it up. I think, too, this is the time when the bootlegs really sort of started to trickle to the point where just the normal person could kind of get them a little bit. They became slightly a little easier to get. I think I had gotten my first bootleg cassette just before Graffiti Bridge came out, and I think it had the Weekend Funk, that whole 3-song thing that Arthur mentioned earlier, Headbuster, when you hear that. So those songs are starting to trickle through. So now Prince goes on, he does the new tour. Just after the album comes out, doesn't really do any of the songs from this album. I know he does Question of You, I remember seeing, but a lot of songs from Batman and from before. But that period, this band is working overtime in the studio, making songs, and gets us to Diamonds and Pearls, where, in my opinion, is a signal post this is a new Prince. I think that's what Big Ken just said. Here's a new Prince. His different look. Here's the band. You know, the sound is going to be different now. It's kind of sort of a band sort of a sound to it. I think it was a big push from him to let everybody know that, yes, I am back, you know, fully engaged. I've got these collections of songs. I've got a great band. You know, really was an emphasis on I got the best band and we can play all this sort of stuff. And yes, it has this hip hop stuff. Now, I want to go to the first single from Diamonds and Pearls, Get Off. When that dropped, for me as a Prince fan, shocked. Because of me, it was a different sound. It was like I was irritated with him flirting with rap before, and I was irritated with T.C. Ellis and all that. But when I heard this, I was like, I remember I was actually in the studio when I heard this. I was like, whoa, this guy's coming with that shit. Like, what? I just couldn't believe it. And I thought, this is good. Like, and he's kind of like rapping, but it's in his Prince style, and the music was dope. I was like, you know, and now some of these snobs and the people I was with, oh, nigga, that ain't nothing but that LL Cool J beat wrapped around with. Yeah, the In Vogue, yeah, it was dope. So I think when the initial first single for this, Head Buster, Big Sexy, what do you think?
I got to co-sign this. This came out right when I was graduating college, and when I heard Get Off, I'm like, okay, now he's back. The entire album, and I don't mean to sound this in a denigrating manner at all, but this album had so much pop crossover appeal, much more so than the previous two. Cream and Diamonds and Pearls, huge hits, you know, and Insatiable, that stayed on my Mac tape back in the day. You know, I would always, you know, lure the ladies back to the dorm with that one. There's just so much good stuff on the album. And it did mark a change because it's a different look. And now that Fink was gone, there was no tie back to the Purple Rain 1999 Dirty Mind era. None. This is a brand new era for him and a new uncharted territory. Now, I did not care for the Game Boys, but in the limited sense they were used on this album, I was okay with it. And the only disappointment that I have was there was no North American tour for it, really.
Yeah. Arthur, speak to me about Get Off. I just want to get some opinions on that track when it first came out.
Man, I'm going to sound so down about this whole thing, but it was a disappointment to me. It was like, yeah. Let me just say this: when the 12-inch first dropped, that was dope. The cover that he hand wrote, which was essentially a kind of a facsimile of the DJ only version, where he had this message. Something, I think it was released on his birthday, or something like that. I didn't all the way dislike the song, but I had already taken hits from portions of Batman, from the near entirety of Graffiti Bridge, the soundtrack, and the movie. And so now this was more of that disconnection, him moving on. Where do I fit now? Agreeing with the idea of I didn't like T.C. Ellis. I don't like this Tony M. I don't like what he's doing with rap. You fronted on rap. You established that, and now you want to do it. So are you catching up? Are you essentially trying to show us how it's supposed to be done? I hope not. Just all of this kind of confusion. And to kind of preempt the album coming out, I had to really, really put this into context about how Paisley Park wasn't doing that well. He really did need some extra capital to be able to take care of his business affairs, these tours that he was putting on. He had long fired Steve Fargnoli, who was his get it done man, and was using Al Magnoli as his manager, and then maybe some Gilbert guy, and maybe he was on his own. And so there was a lot of confusion going on, I believe, in his own personal affairs and it was starting to come out with the music, but you could see him trying to grasp this new sound to address what was coming at him in the 90s, which really was hip hop and New Jack Swing.
Mm-hmm. Jehan, get off.
To me, that's the last time that Prince blew me away. When it exactly, again, Michael, like you said, when it came out, I got a cassette single at first, and I remember a friend of mine called me and said, "Oh, it's at Tower Records." And I rushed down to get it, put it in my Walkman. I couldn't believe my ears. It was just like you said, a new sound. It was different than anything he'd done before, and that's what I loved him for back then. That he would keep flipping it, keep coming out with something else, kept reaching for something different. And the drum sounds, the guitar, that it was new, but it was still Prince. It was new in his style. Then when I got the 12-inch, again I was blown away hugely, particularly by the Eric Leeds flute kind of appearances. Mm-hmm. And it was just so haunting, so mysterious, and I didn't really like house until then. I was all sort of funk, soul, jazz kind of guy, and a bit of hip hop. But then this house style remix came in, and I thought, oh my God, what's this going to say? What's this going to sound like? But I couldn't believe it. I really, my jaw dropped. And then I got the album, and it was like Get Off did not belong on that album. And then, in this respect, just like the other guys are saying, it was very, very pop. He was trying desperately to catch up to everybody else, and even the ballads, they seemed like he was desperately trying to score radio points, like Diamonds and Pearls. It's just a very adult contemporary ballad, but there's no funk to it. And much like the rest of the album, and my other beef with the album actually is the sequencing. It's all over the place. You go from like a Queen kind of tribute track to a kind of pop hip hop track to this adult contemporary ballad to straight pop to sort of like semi jazz, then to country and western, then you get to Get Off, then you get to hip hop again. I think, and one huge crime and really bizarre error of judgment that I think he executed on that album was, I for the life of me cannot understand why he put Claire Fisher strings on Push as opposed to Money Don't Matter Tonight. That's like why, that's like putting Giorgio Armani on a tramp. It's like, why would you do that?
I've never thought about that. That's classic.
Can I make a quick point?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to keep it in context, every great artist goes through this period in their career where they built up a core constituency that is learning, that's growing with that artist. So the 80s Prince that they're so endearing to us, that took me personally from, 10 years old to 20 to 22 years old. You know what I'm saying? And now we have this new Prince that has changed his sound so drastically that I'm now alienated. I don't want to let him go because there's so much of my own life that's been personally invested in his career. But at the same time, I don't know if I can go with him. The same thing happened with great groups, great artists. I mean, the Rolling Stones. Talk to a hardcore Rolling Stones fan about their 80s catalog after Tattoo You. Talk to a Stevie Wonder head about his catalog after Characters. Mm-hmm. Really like after In Square Circle? So every great artist has this period where they increase. Now, I've personally met people who say that, I've been listening to Prince since Diamonds and Pearls. That is my dude. And they're genuine about that. Now, I can't really have a conversation with you because you've never heard Dirty Mind, but they're genuinely locked into Prince, and their starting point was Diamonds and Pearls, that album. Mm-hmm. So here's an artist who has alienated some of his core constituency in the name of growing his audience and expanding his listener base, you know?
Well, I would argue with you that for the people who got me into Prince, they felt the same way you felt the day Around the World in a Day came out. You know, they felt like they were done. And, you know, particularly like my cousin, like she was the hugest Prince fan before I even cared. I thought he was gay. I was like, this guy sucks. She got me into it. But when that album dropped and the videos, she was like, she had nothing ever to do with it. It was not the Prince from Dirty Mind, Controversy, 1999, Purple Rain. It was a rap for her. And I know there's a lot of people who jumped off at that point. It's like, this brother going off on some wild, crazy shit. Where's the funk at? So I can understand what you're saying, but I think he's had a pattern of doing that sort of thing to reinvent musically himself to fit whatever the time is that he comes out. I think that this album, I actually really like this album. This is an album a lot of girlfriends that I've had sometimes over the years who were not Prince fans, they always had this album. It was like the normal people bought this album. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, the songs on here, I think they're just, I agree with everything everybody said. To me, they are great pop songs. I think this album, to me, shows that Prince is a great songwriter. Like, he can write songs to fit in this particular time frame. He can write some songs that he knows people are gonna like. They can be catchy. They have there's certain elements. I mean, there's still got some Prince stuff in it. It's not totally devoid of it, but yeah, it is a different sort of thing. But I think he's consciously like, I gotta make some hits. Like, it ain't gotta be no cohesive sort of album. It's just gonna be hit after hit after hit.
Well, this is also the time that he renegotiated his contract with Warner Brothers.
Right.
For a 16-album deal for, what was it, Jay? $100-something million?
$100 million. $100 million.
Yeah, he would get like a $10 million advance on each album if he sold like 3 or 5 albums previous. So I mean, so he had an incentive to like make sure, like, yeah, okay, let me come with some stuff. Before we continue, Big Sexy, what did you think on this album? I'm sorry, Big Ken.
Spoke on it.
Big Ken, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, all I can say, man, most of what you guys said I agree with. I mean, I liked Get Off when it came out. It was shocking. You know, I was into it, especially the 12-inch with Gangsta Glam and all that stuff. It was different. But I was conflicted, you know, with this whole thing because I knew, you know, part of me knew that he was purposely trying to I don't want to use the word pander, but I guess that's the best word for it. Pander to the hip hop crowd would Get Off, and he was trying to reach that audience. And then when the album came out, I liked the album for the most part, but just like, you know, Arthur and Jehan kind of said, you know, it just seemed like everything was just purpose. It was too sugar-coated for my taste, okay? Other than Money, I think Money Don't Matter Tonight might be the best song on that album for me. You know, the one with the most quality, the most consistency to what the Prince I used to know was like. Stolen was okay. Get Off was great, but I would have preferred the extended version. Walk Don't Walk was okay. Insatiable was a nice ballad, okay? But for everything that the album did good, it was negated once you hit Jughead. You know what I'm saying? Jughead in and of itself is terrible. You know, Jughead is the grandfather of what we would later hear with the flow and all these other little whack kind of wannabe rap songs, and it just threw everything out. All I can say is this might be Diamonds or Pearls might be the least listened to album in his entire catalog for me. Wow.
Well, let's put this out here too. Some of the things surrounding going on at the time of this release. So the first thing we get, of course, was Get Off, which was followed up by a very masterful 12-inch, and followed up by something that hadn't really been done at the time, a video version of the 12-inch, right? Mm-hmm. Where there was videos for every version on there. That was dope. I was like, whoa. And then, you know, it sort of ends with this sort of ominous or interesting sort of preview of Maite, which would come, you know, later. We had no idea what the hell he was talking about. There is the MTV Awards performance of Get Off with the, you know, infamous butt shot, you know. Butt shot aside, I thought the presentation of the band, and I thought it was dope. I was like, woo, Prince that's the man. He's going in. And then I would argue one of his greatest TV performances ever was on the Arsenio Hall show.
Oh, hell yeah. Definitely.
That was amazing.
Don't
do it.
I'm going to do it. Like I said, I'm breaking this show up, damn it. The Arsenio performance was nice. Okay,
amazing.
But when I watch it now and I watch it then, it just seemed like he was trying so hard to position himself into this other artist. I mean, just picture it. You got a little short ass Prince with this typhoon hairstyle, which I hated.
What?
I hated that typhoon. And he's standing there with three tall oak tree looking brothers doing all these Def Jeff and the Soul Brothers dance moves.
Def Jeff.
While he flipping, right? Remember that? He flipping off the, Scoob and Scrap might as well have been on there.
Yeah. Well,
and it was a good performance. What I'm saying, it just, to me, it reeked of, like, I hate to say, but it almost seemed like desperation. Like you're trying to purposely position yourself in this side, the side that, like Arthur said before, that you dissed publicly before, that you were so much against before, and now. Well,
yeah, but at the same point, there's a rap in Alphabet Street. I mean, he's had rap through his stuff. Sheila E.'s rapping in the Sign of Times movie. So I mean, as much as
he
you
was
say,
rapping on Irresistible Bitch.
Sure. So again, he's not dissing. I don't think. I hear what you're saying, but I mean, you could argue that those guys are really just doing nothing different. They're doing more stuff than Wally and them would have done. I mean, and those guys are in Purple Rain, so they've been there the whole time. Listen, the performance, though, the music, the band was killing it. I hope you can agree to that. I mean, when I first heard Cream, when they done Cream on the show, and that was before the album came out, I was disappointed. When the album came out, I was like, how come it don't sound like the performance they did on Arsenio? Because he was killing that. Daddy Pop. Yeah. If I had heard the album version first, which I thought was kind of corny, the one on the TV was bang. I was like, whoa, it's Sly Stone.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That shit was crazy. Kiss. So he did Kiss on TV. Like, it was, whoa. It was a dynamic performance. I'm just saying.
I agree with the performance part. That what you're talking about. What I'm saying is just overall, the whole thing, that from that performance there. Mm-hmm. And I saw him in concert in '93, and that was probably, it was a decent show. But overall, it was a disappointment compared to other shows because it was the same. It was exactly the same thing that he did in the Arsenio show, trying to, do all. It just, I don't know, man. It just to me signaled the beginning. I didn't like where he was going at that point. I just really didn't like it.
Go ahead.
Can I ask Big Ken a question here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did it not seem natural to you? Is that part of the beef? Did you think it was contrived or manufactured and it didn't seem natural?
That's probably a better word for it. That's probably a better word for it. It seemed contrived to me because, again, I understand what Mike was saying. Yeah, he was doing quote-unquote rap, or he could be more spoken word if you think of what he did in Alphabet Street, Irresistible Bitch. You can go on the tracks back in the day.
But they weren't really rapping on the Arsenio show, right?
No, but Tony M. I mean, not Tony M. No, they weren't on that. No, Tony M. was there with him, but he didn't have the mic yet on this one yet. That's right. That was the next album that he actually got the mic. But still, the whole point with the hip hop dancing and the typhoon and all that,
it was like Kid and Play.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. Kid and Play already did that, bruh.
Yeah, but he did it the Prince style. I hear what you're saying. Let me just throw this in. Let me throw this in also.
It's like a Kid Play picked up a guitar trying to sound like Prince.
I agree. I agree. Now that's funny that somebody remind me Herbie Love Bug Salt and Pepper when we go on because that ties into Prince. Next, they do the performance. I don't know if you guys remember. It was some sort of charity event.
Special Olympics.
Diamonds and Pearls. And they did Diamonds and Pearls. And this is before he came. I thought that was amazing. I mean, this version, he has the guitar solo that is missing from the album. Again, I was like, whoa. Like I would substitute the album version and I was taking these performance versions and putting those in their places. Like I put those on cassette. I thought they were amazing. I would say this, I think that the album suffers from being overproduced. And when you hear the band do the songs, you can hear like, okay, this shit is kind of dope. Like the same thing when you hear Willing and Able when they was on the Super Bowl thing. That Willing and Able performance was far superior than what was on that record. You were like, whoa. Why can't it sound like that? So I think the band and what they was doing was on another level. I just think that album was processed down so much that it sort of took the soul out of it. And then again, the other part of it is too, the introduction of Rosie Gaines, like really being out there. She was dope. Like Rosie was, I thought she was great to me personally. All right. Any final thoughts on this Diamonds and Pearls? And let's segue also into, you know, what comes after Diamonds and Pearls. Obviously, the tour did not come to America for whatever reasons I don't understand. The album was successful here. Tour, we don't get to see that. And then he drops, moving forward, we got to move forward, Sexy MF. And sort of a James Brown, very obvious sort of James Brown influence in there, more of rap sort of thing. But then again, the song title and is way out there. Drops that video for it, you know, the video single sort of thing. Author, Sexy MF. What do you think?
Okay, so here's where it all just goes right off the rails.
Agreed.
Right off the rails. I have tried more than any other Prince album. I have tried to like this album the most. Sexy MF, I liked the track. I thought it was bold. I thought it was aggressive. I thought it was a good follow-up to Diamonds and Pearls as an album. I mean, don't get me wrong. At this time in my life, I had yet to find Prince unlistenable until I got to this album. Since then, I've owned this album 3 times, and I have thrown this album in the trash 3 times, personally. I can't get through the album. And I can't necessarily quantify my reasons, you know, for that, other than to say, I'm putting it all on my tag. I'm putting it all on my tag. I'm putting it all on the idea of when keeping it real went wrong.
Oh, too
We've
much.
got the Spirit Child. We've got 7. I still don't know what the hell 7 means. I have no idea. 7 what? Angels? Spirits? What? What is it? I have no idea. But I'm not answering your question. I thought Sexy MF was bold. I wanted to like it. It was hard to get through, you know, but I kind of got through it until the album came in, and that was something else. He was still, you know, let's not forget. I mean, he's trying to stay relevant, but at the same time, he's got a lot more self-confidence than he had in the 80s. In the 80s, a lot of the music that we really resonate with, you know, was a Prince who was insecure. He was always, a lot of his music dealt with themes of desire. Why, you know, something in the water, you know, why don't you love me the way that I love you? Irresistible bitch. You know, I just let myself get dogged out.
Loneliness.
Loneliness. A Sign of the Times, which was an open book of his relationship with Susanna Melvoin. He wanted to get married. That didn't happen. You know, she broke it off. But now we've got a Prince that's more confident with himself. He very well may have near single-handedly renegotiated the largest contract ever paid to an artist in Warner Brothers. So what does a confident Prince sound like? What is a Prince who who believes that he's now in control of his own destiny? What does that sound like? That sounds like Diamonds. That sounds like the Simple album. That sounds like the Beautiful Girl in the World. That sounds like 1-800-NEW-FUNK. You know, where he's now not just he's always sort of made his own world and invited you in, but now he's making his own world, calling you in and keeping you there. Like if you can't roll with yellow pants with my ass out, then you can't be here. Because that's the line right now. You're either gonna deal with this and you're not. And that's what those albums, really the Symbol album, that's what that really spoke to me on. If you're not on this, then you just can't ride, because this is where I'm going.
All right. I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna throw this also in the mix. So we got Sexy MF was the first thing. And of course that can't really go too far because it's, you know, motherfuckers in the title and the lyric. So the next really sort of official first single, My Name Is Prince.
Oh Lord.
Now this for me is where it all changes. I'm gonna go to Big Ken.
Thank you very much, because I was hoping you
go
would
go into those songs. You can always go into the album as well. So
well, I mean, it'll be short and sweet because it's pretty much along the same lines of what Arthur just said. I mean, but I would say Maite ain't the reason where this thing went bad. Where this thing went bad is you had an overindulgence of Tony M.
Yep.
In and of and throughout this record. And it's just too much. I mean, you bought a Prince album, not a Tony M album. And it just seemed like, you guys did a show on the Snobs where you were talking about experimentation and indulgence. I think this album is indulgence. Anytime you go and you put on a policeman hat with gold chains covering your face and a microphone-shaped gun, you indulging like a motherfucker. Okay, so, I mean, there are some decent tracks on this album. Okay, let's state it. I mean, Love to the Nines is great. Sexy MF you talked about. I like Sweet Sweet Baby a lot. I think it's a beautiful song. Damn You is a nice ballad. Seven is pretty nice. And God Created Woman is good. There's a handful of nice tracks on here, but the whole flow of the album just doesn't work because you do the song and then you have this whole stupid thing with Kirstie Alley as a reporter and then Prince doing this, he don't want to answer questions and she getting frustrated like, what to do? What is this? You know what I'm saying? It's just, this is another album, this along with Diamonds and Pearls, I can't listen to. And the funny part is when it came out, I was the prototypical Prince apologist. I was running around telling people, oh, this is the new shit, this is the new hotness, Prince is back. Deep down, I knew I was lying. This was not hitting. It just wasn't hitting. So this right here is the period, I think the lowest of the low point, in my opinion, of the 90s. The 90s as a whole started off kind of bad with these first two albums. Well, first three if you include Graffiti Bridge. And then it kind of picks up after that. But this is just indulgence in my opinion. It's not cohesive at all. Too much Tony M.
Yeah. So My Name is Prince. I think that song is complete. That's the worst Prince song ever, I think. The fact that he's like, is a really aggressive sort of rapping, and musically it's just terrible. The video, the presentation, I didn't understand like who co-signed. I was like, was there a joke behind this? Because I couldn't understand like how he actually really thought this was good. I remember hearing about this song before it came out. The great magazine that used to come out called, it was Uptown Magazine. I'm sorry, was it Controversy?
Yeah.
It was controversial. Well, there were two of them.
There was two. I think it was controversial. Both of them were sort of hyping this up, and they would review shows where he was starting to do this song. And I was like, just listening from the title, thinking, My Name is Prince is probably a cold track. Like, I can't wait to hear this. When I first hear this, I was appalled. I was like, this is everything I'm against for Prince. And it's not good. Even if I Get Off, he just rap, but it was great. I mean, it was like, okay, it was a great song. This was a terrible song. I thought anybody could see that this was a terrible song. I remember going back and reading other books where they talk about, the meetings of like Prince wanting to put this song out as a single, and they're like, no, like Prince, this is actually not good. But again, he's that sort of dude that just gonna make him want to do it. But this song is terrible, and I remember they did this on Arsenio, and he went back again, trying to recreate the greatness of that first performance. Absolutely horrible. This tainted me for a while when I heard this, and I act like this song does not exist. I just think this song is really, really bad, and